With 10 games left in the Premier League season, Arsenal are currently top on goal difference, and with their crucial clash against Manchester City on the weekend, I thought what better time to be talking about Arsenal before that game kicks off. And I thought to myself, I watch a lot of Arsenal. However, why not ask an Arsenal fan on their opinions in the run-in? And I thought, why not ask my good friend Toby? And if you're unaware, we actually have a podcast together which we do every week during the course of the season. It's out every Tuesday, called the Football Fellowship Podcast. And if you think to yourself, Toby's got some great points and you want to see more of him, make sure to watch us over there. There will be a link to that to the channel in the description below. And Toby, thank you very much for coming on to the channel, very first time making your debut. And as an Arsenal fan, top of the league with 10 games to go, still in the knockout stages of the Champions League, you must be delighted. But I want to take you back right to the start of the season. Did you think with 10 games to go you'd be in the position that you are?
Well, firstly, Mev, thanks for having me on. What an honour to be on your channel as well. Back into Arsenal. I don't think I would be surprised the position that we are in at the moment. Last season we were really, really good, especially in that first half of the season. And I think over that summer period and going into the season, we've only really improved. Looking at the signings of Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, who's able to play a number of positions, David Raya coming in, and Jurgen Timber as well, who unfortunately has been hit by injury. I don't think there was really any reason for myself or other Arsenal fans to think that we wouldn't be challenging again. I think the only issue, maybe in some question marks, was that a lot of us knew that Liverpool were going to be back this year. But when you look at it in that sense, that's only 6 points less in terms of Arsenal's season. Liverpool, of course, are going to be up there and challenging as well, but it doesn't mean that we can't get as many points as we did last year, carry on playing as well, and still be in that title challenge. I know we're top as well, and it's difficult to not get carried away with being in that first position, but with things being so tight and a point only between the top three, I think you can only really look at the points as opposed to position at the moment, and sitting on 64 points after 28 games, can't have too many complaints.
Yeah, not only that, you've got the best goal difference of any team in the Premier League. And it's been a really interesting season watching Arsenal, because I think you started off really well. Everything looked very promising. You went through a bit of a sticky spell over the winter period. And then that winter break where you went on in January, and I don't know what Arteta did when he was out in the Middle East, but you've looked absolutely phenomenal since you've come back. And you mentioned him there, Declan Rice, because he was a player that a lot of top clubs were linked to. You know, Chelsea were linked to him, Liverpool were linked to him, Man United, everyone seemed to want him. Arsenal got him. Is he, for you, Arsenal's best player this season and arguably signing of the season?
I think he has got to be in the conversation for both, if not Arsenal's best player and the signing of the season. 6 goals and 5 assists. He's really stepped up in terms of output, especially being on those corner kicks. As you mentioned, Dubai, since coming back, he has been the main man on that left-hand side, swinging them in and creating numerous chances. In terms of statistics in the league, we're looking at top 20 for all players for tackles plus interceptions, top 10 for touches, carries, total distance carried, and progressive distance carried. He has just fit seamlessly into that Arsenal side, and I think that's been such a big part. When you have a price tag as big as his, there can be so much pressure, but he has just brushed it off, strolled in, and he has been up there with Gabriel and Saka, I think it would be to say, as Arsenal's top 3 players this season. And I think if we can go all the way and win the league, he has got to be signing of the season. If he has been that man that's pushed us on and got us over that mark compared to last season, yeah, he's got to be signing of the season. Only question marks maybe about signing of the season is the price tag, and there could be some other players who are better value potentially. Maybe looking at Vicario at Spurs, who I think has been really, really good and was only 15-20 million, and someone like Cole Palmer as well, 40 million, and has revolutionised Chelsea's attack. But Declan Rice, there's a reason he is in all of these conversations for signing of the season, people's team of the season, and player of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I look at Arsenal this season, I get a slightly different vibe from them. And I'm not sure if it's how successful you've been off set pieces with Declan Rice on the corners, as you mentioned. But I just feel like this is a slightly more physical Arsenal side, a side that's a bit more ruthless and, you know, got a bit more snarliness to them. I don't know if it's the addition of Kai Havertz, but have you been able to notice a kind of difference from Arsenal last season to this season, which makes you think that Arsenal could go all the way this year?
Oh, 100%. I think at times it's almost a completely different side. the really key aspect for me, and I think something that Arteta has really tried to drill into the side this season, is an increased amount of control. We do look slower this season, and at times I really don't think that's a bad thing. I think he has learnt from maybe last season in games where it was a little bit chaotic. There was a lot of free-flowing football, but there wasn't much structure in terms of defending against counter-attacks, controlling games when we were leading 1 or 2-0, especially as we saw at Anfield last season, at around this time in the season where we completely lost control of that game and almost handed it to Liverpool. Whereas this season, it's been the complete opposite. We know when to slow games down. We know in games when we don't need to go and continue playing and trying to score loads of goals against some of the top sides. We know when we can sit back and rest on our laurels, when we've got players like Saliba, Gabriel, Rice, who are going to protect us and hopefully see out those games. And I think at this point of the season, having that added element of increased control is going to be huge. Last season, we saw those 3 draws that we had, West Ham, Southampton and Liverpool. That is what really ended our title chances, not the loss to City, because I think if we could have seen those games out and won them and lost to City, we still would have been above them in the league. Whereas now this season, it feels a lot less likely that that's going to happen, which is, for me, a huge positive, even if it does potentially bring a little bit less creative sort of output and goal scoring.
Actually, that's quite interesting, because let's get on to it, because you touched on it there, the Man City game. Because we're recording this, this might go out on the Wednesday or the Thursday, I'm not quite sure yet, but for us, we're recording this Monday. How are the nerves? Because there's still a few days left. You still feeling confident going into it?
I say yes through gritted teeth, it feels like. I am very nervous for this game. I feel like the long wait that we've had, I think it was when the Man City game comes around, it'll be 19 games since we last played, and it feels like it's been a lot of build-up, just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I think we can do it. I think we really can go there and get a result. We beat them 1-0 at the Emirates this season. We've beaten Liverpool once in the league and got a draw at Anfield. I think we can really go there and get a good result, and we've had a decent amount of time to prepare for this now. I would love to say that we can go there and get a win. I think we have the quality to do so. I really do.
Well, you mentioned it there. I mean, since your form, since the turn of the year, since that trip to Dubai, you've been absolutely phenomenal. Scored so many goals. I mean, you've taken teams to the cleaners completely. Do you think the international break would have halted your momentum a little bit? That actually makes it a bit more of an even game than if it was just before the international break?
Yeah, I think if it was just the international break, it would obviously be a lot less period of time. But because we had that break, but even before that, in terms of the FA Cup, where we didn't have a game, 19 days without a professional game of the whole team, a lot of players away on international duty, the whole squad's not there in terms of training and preparing. It does get me a little bit worried, especially with City. They did have that FA Cup game, and they are going to have a little bit of a rest, but not too long. I think maybe in terms of some sort of an advantage, in that case, it would be for City. It does feel like a long time, and I hope it's not too long of a time that Arteta and the coaching staff start overthinking things and trying to prepare too much and sort of drifting away from the season-long game plan that we have and how we want to play week on week, not just specifying it because we're playing City.
Yeah, and you mentioned control, which I think is an absolute, such a key part of how Arsenal played this season. And I think one player who's been crucial in that has been Martin Odegaard. How do you see Arsenal's midfield coming up against Manchester City's midfield? Because, they got the likes of Rodri, Kevin De Bruyne, if he's fit, Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden. They've got, arguably the best midfield in the Premier League. Do you think your midfield can match them with the likes of probably Odegaard, Rice, and probably Jorginho if he plays?
Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting point, whether we do play Jorginho. I think if we want to keep that ball and use it the best we can, I think he does have to play. He's such a good ball retainer, and City are going to dominate possession, and we really need to take advantage of the ball when we get it. But playing Jorginho as well, the way City are going to attack, he's not the best defensively. It might leave us a little bit open if we're not having Rice sitting in really deep in that six. So what I'm expecting, I think it's probably going to be Rice and Jorginho sitting almost as a double behind Martin Odegaard. And I think Martin Odegaard's job is going to be really to harry Rodri, try and disrupt him as much as possible. And we see Martin Odegaard normally push on, I think, onto that defensive press in the 4-4-2, but I would not be surprised if it's Havertz playing more as a solo pressing striker and Odegaard dropping and trying to disrupt Rodri, because he's got the stamina, he's got the defensive awareness and the ability to lead the press and try and press on Rodri when he can. So I think that's how we're going to line up, and I think it is going to be really, really difficult coming up against one of the best midfields in the world easily, especially if you're looking at De Bruyne, Foden and Rodri occupying those positions. And I think hopefully the difference this year is going to be Declan Rice sitting in there, someone who can hopefully just break up that Man City midfield a bit, which I think is what we missed last season, where we got battered essentially 4-1.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say there about the lineup, because I think two key positions for me, I mean, apart from Jorginho playing, or if he's not, but one is who you're going to play up front. Is it going to be Jesus or is it going to be Havertz? And at left back, if it's going to be Jakub Kiwior or Zinchenko, who do you think Arteta is going to go with?
I'd be pretty confident in saying it's going to be Kiwior and Havertz. They've both been in really good form in the last 5 or 6 games. It would be quite unfair to drop them. And I think Zinchenko and Jesus, as opposed to Kiwior and Havertz, would be really good up against a low block, with Jesus dropping in, his really good close control, Zinchenko inverting and driving that ball forward from sort of that left 8, left back hybrid role would be good against a low block. But I think against City away, they're going to dominate the ball. Having Havertz as an outlet, someone we can send the ball on to, he can hold it up as we've seen in recent weeks. He can still press that back line fantastically well. And then Kiwior on that left back side, someone who can sit in. He can invert when needed. He can push on, but he is naturally more a centre back, more defensively solid than Zinchenko. And I would be very, very surprised if it's not those two players starting on Sunday.
Well, that's actually quite interesting what you said there about how you think they're maybe going to sit back a bit more, because when I was watching the Liverpool Man City game, I really thought in that game there was kind of a moment where I thought to myself, you can really get at this Manchester City backline if you go for it, because they're not used to getting attackers with pace and power and frightening attacking threat that you can really get at them. So I do wonder to myself if Arteta, maybe with that long international break, might overthink it and may think that, you know what, I could probably go for it. But in this case, I don't necessarily think it's the worst idea for them to go for it. I mean, obviously there will be times away from him, especially at the Etihad, where you will have to sit back. But I think more than anything else, I think Arsenal need to be focused on their own game and going forward and making sure that they play the way that they play and impose that on the game of football. Do you think Arteta will do that, or do you think, it is going to be a bit of a low block?
Yeah, it's such a dilemma, and I think it really depends how Arteta sees this game and its impact on the rest of the season. If he sees it as a must-win game where there's no chance that he can rely on City dropping points later down the line, then I think we will see Arsenal really use that ball when they get it, try to transition super, super quickly and not worry about control too much. I don't think we'll see a lot of pressing, I think, if Arteta goes for it, but I think when we do win that ball, wherever we win it, we're going to move it quick if Arteta sees it as a must-win. If Arteta sees it as a game where he knows we cannot lose that game and go on to win the league, then that's where we could see Arsenal sitting back a little bit, trying to break on long balls as opposed to risking passing it up and through the pitch. But ultimately, I think he's got to get a balance. I don't think you can think too much into the game, and as I said previously, disrupt that normal rhythm, that normal playing style that we do have. I think, as you said, maybe he's going to do a bit of both. Sit back a little bit on the pressing, but also move that ball a little bit quicker than we have done to try and break through City when they have committed players forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting you said about what you think the result means for the rest of the season, because this is such a unique season with it being a 3-horse title race. I think genuinely all 3 teams have a chance of winning the league, and they all have their own storyline they're kind of weaving. Manchester City, can they do it for the 4th time and do it for a record amount of times in a row? Can Liverpool do it in Klopp's kind of like last fairy tale kind of season? And can Arsenal, on the back of last season where they, quote unquote bottled it, can they, come back and do it again and really get the first title for a long time? I think like each storyline in its own way is unique and interesting, but I was just thinking, with the 3-horse title race, can you afford to even maybe draw? Because if, say, Liverpool beat Brighton on the weekend, then Liverpool will go into the lead, and then you're banking on Liverpool trying to drop points, and Man City are still only 1 point behind. So do you think the game against Man City is a must-win or a must-not-lose?
It's so difficult, and it's so difficult to call, especially when you're coming up against two other teams in the title race. I don't think it's a must win. I don't want it to be. I obviously don't want to lose or draw and have to rely on Man City to drop points. But looking at the league, Man City haven't won 9 out of their 28 games so far, I believe. So there is still a decent chance that they are going to drop further points. And I think if we do draw, if we do lose, our heads can't drop and believe that it's already gone, because there's still a very decent amount of the season left. Just as if we do win, we can't rest on our laurels and expect, we've now got a 4-point gap over City, we can sit back a little bit. Whatever the result, you've got to take the rest of the season game by game, pick up as many points as you can. And if you are in a position where you need your title rivals to drop points, then it's just another couple games on the weekend where you're going to be sat on the edge of your seat waiting for another crazy moment.
Well, in that case, do you think Arsenal can lose the game on the weekend and still go on to win the Premier League? Because I think there are some very interesting fixtures for all three teams still to come up. I think all three teams still have to play Villa, still have to play Spurs. I think Liverpool and Arsenal got Man United as well. And I think, it's not the be-all and end-all. But do you think maybe mentally, if you lost to City on the weekend, do you think the Arsenal players will be able to go again and win the remaining fixtures and still win the league?
Can they? Yeah, 100%. I think we'd be absolutely crazy to think we can't win the league if it'd be 2 points behind City if we lose this game. That's one game difference, one weekend difference. And I really hope that Arteta has instilled that into the squad this season, improved the mentality a little bit where we did start to panic and drop off, and to be honest, at the end of last season, fall off a cliff a little bit, the amount of points we were dropping. And I hope that things like that have changed. And that's something that, for me, is really important, that there is season on season improvement. And I think that's what a lot of people are going to be examining at the end of this season, that things have changed since last year. So can we lose and go and win the league? Of course. Will we? Well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that is true. And I think, supporting Liverpool, I've got Man City like rent-free stuck in my head. And I'm not ashamed to say that, because they're such a juggernaut. They're a phenomenal side. And you can't help but think to yourself, even a draw sometimes feels like a loss when you come up against this side. And I do think to myself that with another team in the mix, it makes it so hard to know, because you normally just have your title rivals. Don't lose to your title rivals and maybe even beat them, and you're in a good position. But it's so hard this year to really tell what's going to happen. And I just wanted to ask you about Arsenal's mentality, because last season, as soon as they lost the game to Man City, you and me were in the pub watching that game together. It was pretty comprehensive, and then we kind of just sunk and it's Man City's league. It's theirs to win now. They're going to go on and do it. Do you not feel that? Maybe not. Do you not feel? Do you think that Arsenal have to win something eventually with this squad? Because I often think about Liverpool versus Spurs in the 2019 Champions League final. It was kind of the culmination of both of those sides with Pochettino and Klopp, and Liverpool on the back of getting 97 points, losing to Man City in the league by 1 point on the final day. Spurs on the back of a 4 or 5 year project under Pochettino. And you saw what happened to those two teams after the final. Liverpool went on to win the Premier League, and Pochettino ended up getting sacked by Tottenham Hotspur the following season. Do you think mentally it will scar these players if for the second season in a row they fall just short of both the Premier League and the Champions League, which may prevent them from winning future silverware?
That's such an interesting question, and one that I think myself and other Arsenal fans were probably asking ourselves last season. How will this drop-off affect Arsenal going into this season? Will there be a lack of confidence? Will there be players questioning the system? The fact that we were 5 points clear with not too many games left to go, and they ended up bottling it essentially. Last season felt different because there wasn't too much expectation. I think, especially from other clubs, from the social media, from mainstream media, Arsenal I think their aspirations were to get top 4. They then ended up in a title race, and it didn't feel like the end of the world when they didn't get it. This season, given how much money has now been spent, the quality of the squad, how much we have improved, it does feel like there is starting to gain an expectation that we need to win the Prem, we need to win a trophy. And it's so difficult, because ultimately success in football is determined by the trophies that you do win. But also on the other hand, from where we have come, a similar position to Liverpool, starting in Klopp's tenure at 8th, he's pulled them all the way up and you've won every trophy possible now. Arteta is getting to that point, a very similar point in time to when Liverpool won their first league title. He is going to start getting those questions. He is going to really have to start pushing those players to make trophies the absolute goal. I think if we don't win one this season, it will be disappointing. And I think next season will be the big judgment season, really. I think if Arsenal can't win a trophy over the next 2 seasons, there does have to be question marks. Why are these issues not being addressed, of us not being able to win a trophy, not being able to get over that final hurdle, and ultimately what is going wrong and what needs to be changed, whatever that is.
Yeah, you know what? I actually completely agree. I think Arsenal have the 3rd youngest squad in the Premier League this season. I think they're only going to get better and better physically. I think the only question is mentally. If they don't win the Premier League this season, I think you kind of go, do you know what? It's okay because it's Liverpool and Klopp's last season and it's Man City who are juggling under Pep Guardiola. And if you don't win the Champions League this season, I think you can also say, you know what? We're actually on the tougher side of the draw. We've got Bayern Munich, and if you get through that tie, then we've got Real Madrid or Man City, which is not easy either. And obviously, you don't have the history with the Champions League of winning it before. So I think it's new to not only Arteta, but also these players as well. So you said there, you think if Arsenal don't win anything this season, and if you don't win anything next season, is that when you think there might have to be a change in terms of manager?
It's really difficult. I don't think there would have to be a change in manager. I just think it would have to be a big examination of the club ultimately. Where are things going wrong? As long as, for me, there is season on season improvement, we're picking up more points in the league, we're getting further in competitions, even if, say, next season we don't get all the way to, say we get to the final of every competition and get 95 points in the league and we still don't win a trophy, that is still a huge improvement from this season. And to sack Arteta after that would be absolutely insane. But you would hope then the season after that, following that, they would look at, clearly the players are struggling in finals, for example. Clearly there needs to be work on seeing games out, big games, pressure, mentality. There just has to be season on season improvement. And I think if it gets to a stage next season where we haven't won a trophy, potentially maybe we haven't improved on this season, and then things do have to be examined a little closely. And especially at a club of this size, it's been really easy the last seasons to say, oh, there's not much expectation. From where we've come from, sitting in 8th in the league, we can't rest on that. We need to start getting back that mentality that Arsenal is one of the biggest clubs in the country, one of the biggest clubs in the world. We should be challenging for league titles now that we are there and that we have the quality to do so.
Yeah, do you know what? I think you make some very valid points, but I often think this myself, is that you always say, like, oh, as long as you're competing for the Premier League and competing for the Champions League, well, Liverpool have been competing with Man City for a while now, but we've only won 1 league title in the last 4, 5, 6 years. So it goes to show you eventually need to get over the line. Are you slightly frustrated with the fact that maybe you haven't won more silver in terms of a League Cup or an FA Cup? Because that could be seen as a route, perhaps, to help the players, get used to getting over the line. Are you surprised that you haven't gone harder in some competitions, or do you think you've just been unlucky?
Yeah, I think it's just something that hasn't really been prioritised in the last couple of seasons. I think getting Champions League football has been that big aim, and I think was a goal given to Arteta by the board, so that to get the club back in the Champions League is huge financially and is going to be the main goal of the club. In terms of FA Cup and League Cup, I think we've struggled because our squad depth over the last 4 or 5 years hasn't been particularly great. It either means we're overplaying players, giving them too many minutes, or the players that are playing in these games just aren't quite up to the standard. I think now we've built a pretty decent squad, and I'd like to see next season getting much further in the FA Cup and League Cup. And it would just be it would be good to get a trophy. We haven't won a trophy since the FA Cup in 2020, so it'd be nice to start prioritising those as well, not just league position and sort of Champions League qualification and getting out the group ultimately.
Yeah, I think it eventually football, all it boils down to is, are you winning and do you have silverware? I think the memories are great, but I think the trophies help cement the memories as being worthwhile. And I think, I often think that, the Champions League run the Liverpool had to Kiev where we lost to Real Madrid, and there was that the Carriers final. I think there were some amazing memories on the way to that. I think we beat Manchester City in the quarterfinals, but then that often gets forgotten because we don't end up going to win it. So what I really don't want is, I quite like this Arsenal squad, so I really don't want, the last 2 seasons just to be like, ugh, you look back and you think to yourself with the negative connotations because you didn't end up going and winning it. And I don't want that to happen, because I think this is a really talented group of players who have, the world at their feet if they choose to go on and do it. But yeah, like I said, for me personally, just Man City just live rent free in my head.
I'd like to ask you a really quick hypothetical question. You asking about sort of how Klopp built up the side, and then you've been able to win all the trophies pretty much available to you. If, say, in that Premier League season you fell off at the end and weren't able to win the title, in that one Champions League final you didn't win it, how would that affect Klopp's reign in your eyes? Because it could be that Arteta could be in a similar position where he's built the squad really, really well, but just hasn't actually been able to win them silverware.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because in 18-19, where we got 97 points against Man City, lost by a point on the last day. I think if we didn't have that Champions League final at the end, and we didn't have the whole Barcelona and the comeback and the manner and the fact that it happened, I think, do the players potentially have the confidence and the belief in themselves? I would like to think yes, but the truth is I don't know, because it was very, very, very demoralising losing on the last day after having a phenomenal campaign. Would Liverpool have even been in the position where they won all the games up until that Watford game? I think they won every game and drew away to Old Trafford, which was a 1-1 draw. I don't think we're necessarily mentally in the right frame of mind. We got late wins against Aston Villa. I think Robertson and Mane end up getting the winners. These like iconic moments. Will the players have the mentality? Do you have the drive? Or are they just a little bit? Has Man City just chipped away at them a little bit too much? I don't know. It would have to be seen, but it would be so interesting if Liverpool, say, didn't get Spurs, if they got Ajax instead, how that game would have gone. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Musa Sissoko put out his arm, got an early penalty, so many things could have gone differently, and, it could have been so different, because we could have fallen off a cliff after not winning anything in that season, but thankfully we won the Champions League, and I think the players did have to win something. I think we still would have been, I would like to think at least, we still would have been fine, but I'm not 100% sure is the honest truth, because that's what I think about Arsenal. Do they eventually have to win something before they, maybe mentally they decide that they don't have it in them anymore? But
yeah, to win one trophy and then go on to win more. That first one has years, like you say, it's got to come. Otherwise, how long does it go without winning one and not having that belief? That's a good point.
Yeah, and I just really I think Arteta and I think these Arsenal players, they deserve it. I do think they deserve it. I mean, a culmination of last season and this season, they will deserve to win something. I just hope that they do get over the line, because it'd be a shame if they didn't. Final 2 questions, and I want you to put your money where your mouth is, Toby. First one, what's going to be the score in the game on the weekend?
I would love to say an Arsenal win.
Then say it.
I'm thinking sort of around 1-1, 2-1. I'm gonna put my head on the line. I'm gonna say an Arsenal 2-1 victory. I really hope that we just give it a really, really good go and play our way. Don't be afraid going to the Etihad. Don't be afraid that it's Manchester City. Just go and play and win, like we did against Liverpool back in February, where we completely dominated. And I know it was home, so it's different, but I think we can go and do it again. And I think an Arsenal 2-1 victory. Come on, the boys.
Great. Okay, and then finally, and I think it's really interesting to ask you this now before the City game, because a lot of people will be talking about what are the title challenges after this game, but I think that in itself is potentially, playing a bit safe. I want you to tell me, we all know Arsenal can win the league, but will they win the league?
I've got to put myself in a position where I believe Arsenal will win the league. We have been in such bad situations as a club in terms of footballing in the last 5 or 6 years. Now we are at this position. I've got to say that we will win the league. We have the quality in the squad. We've shown how solid defensively we can be, how good attacking we can be. We've got joint most points in the league, best goal difference, most goals scored, least goals conceded. We will go and win the league. Would I put a bet on it of any money? Maybe not. Am I willing to put my neck on the line and be hounded as a clueless, biased Arsenal fan? 100%. So I really do think we can do it, and I reckon we can get over the line and we'll do it.
Oh, thank you very much, mate. There we go. There is my title right there. Why Arsenal will win the league. There we go. Thank you very much. But Toby, thank you very much for doing this. Thank you very much for joining me. And everyone, if you've really enjoyed watching Toby, then you can catch more of him on the Football Fellowship podcast. We do it every week. Every Tuesday, we're reviewing the Premier League fixtures. There will be a link to the channel in the description below. Toby, once again, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you in the next one.